Hello YouTubers and welcome to another episode of the vlogs with a lovely rainy day. Today's episode was supposed to be about tips for your 2K on the day of your 2K to help get the best score out of yourself, but unfortunately, as you can tell from the title, my 2K today didn't go so well, so I didn't want to have a video talking about tips to make you better when I did said things and I didn't have a good 2K. The tips themselves helped, but unfortunately today's performance was probably unrelated to the tips. So the tips will be in another video, but now what we're going to do is show you the 2K itself, and then after we're going to discuss the 2K and talk about sort of what to do now, what to do after a sort of not very good performance, and how to sort of use that to step on and assess what you've done today, or assess what I've done today to step on to in the future. So now I'm going to show you the 2K, and then I'll be back probably at the house to talk about, to assess a little bit what to do now and how to use that 2K for a little bit of fuel, not just food, but fuel to add to the fire for our next test, and also assessing it to see why that may have happened. So here is the 2K. And as I'm editing today's episode, the GoPro unfortunately turned off only 10 seconds into recording the 2K. Fortunately, it wasn't, and there was no dramatics and nothing really happened in the 2K itself. Nobody fell off, apart from the not very good score. So we're going to hop straight into talking about what to do after a bad performance instead of putting in sort of other 2K footage. But if you do want to see some 2K footage, I've got a couple of other videos, especially the one from a couple of weeks ago where we did the erg in test week. So let's get to a little bit of a chat about what to do after a bad performance. And we've made it back to the house post erg. Got back here, took some time to think, to relax, to have some food, because remember, food is fuel, have a little nap, and just sort of have a chance to assess the damage, if you will. So all tests, all events that don't go well are rubbish. They don't feel good to do, and no one wants to do them. Everyone wants to have good test or good event after good event and see the numbers or whatever it is keep getting better and excelling. But like I've said before, life isn't just a case of a straight line upwards or success after success. It can be a step back and then a couple of steps forward, maybe a few steps back and then a few steps forward, but it's not always forward, forward, forward. So today was a bit of a step back, and I mean step back in obviously I didn't lose fitness today, or I didn't lose what I've been working on for the past however long, but it's a step back in the way of, okay, for test week I did a 555 and today I did a 610, so 15 seconds different. And why is that? So that's a massive difference, and I think there are a few points that I think that affected me today and this week. So obviously none of these are, I'm not trying to make excuses for myself, but this is why I've came up, why I went quite a lot slower than what I was aiming to do. And what I was aiming to do was go around what I did for test week, but make it feel that bit more efficient, that bit easier. So the test itself, I succeeded in what I was doing, or what I wanted to do, for about 1,300 meters, and then it was all like a light switch happened, or went on and off, to on to off, and I went from doing the splits that I wanted to pull, so 29, to very much higher than that, so in the mid-30s. So it was a massive, just all of a sudden it was like, nope, no more 29s for you, and now good luck getting them back. And that was a strange feeling, because usually in the 2K at that point, it's like an assessment of what split lower do I want to go. So that makes me point to the plan that I had being too difficult, or something that I'm not ready for. So the plan that we had in place was to hold 29s the entire way, but make it easy as possible. All of my PB 2Ks have been, so my 550 was a 130 first K, and then building quite aggressively as I get to the finish line. So I think part of what happened today was my body, or today, or whatever it was, there's just that little bit, maybe it's just my physiology, but that's like a big sort of excuse. Maybe it's just how I operate, that the difference between a 130 and a 129 for a K, yes, it's only a couple of seconds, but when you've got another K to do on top of that, it can be a pretty negative effect on the latter K. And that's what I was talking to the coaches, and just 0.1 of a difference here or there can really make or break your 2K. And so if I'm doing a whole split different, that can have quite a big effect. So there's a couple of points in the 2K today that I'm going to be changing. So I'm going to play more to my strengths, which are the wind, essentially. But at the same time, the negative of that, I've been criticized before that I shouldn't have such a big wind at the end of a 2K, because I should have tried harder at the start. So it's a kind of difficult place to be in for me, where I say, okay, I feel like my strengths are doing a 2K test specifically, going off light and then really pushing in hard at the end, rather than going off a bit harder and then not pushing as hard at the end. So my strengths are sort of a very high or very drastic negative split, whereas some people have criticized me before of having too drastic of a difference, and they want me to bring that in. And then I look at my scores I've done on my PB, and all of them have been that drastic negative split, so which points to me having the strength of doing that. So that's where I'm going to go in the next 2K for trials, which is only a week and a few days away, so a week on Saturday, which also presents a point of, okay, this is very close to a big event. So today wasn't a huge thing, it was more of a testing place, so it's good that today happened today and not next week. But it is so close to next week that it bumps the confidence a little bit. And so that's where the strategies that I'm going to be using today and going forward will be very important, to make sure that I'm not letting what happened today feed into what's going to happen next week. So next week is about performing to the best of my ability. Today was warming up essentially for that. So essentially not had a great warm-up. But that's okay, we do things before the actual testing, partly to get that warm-up in, but also to give us the opportunity to have a little bit of wobble. So the wobble was reasonably big today, unfortunately, but it is a chance for me to reevaluate. And by reevaluate, I mean, instead of trying to more flat pace my 2K, I'm going to really stick to the strengths, and maybe the overall split, the overall score that I was aiming for was too fast. So I did 55 in 4 weeks ago now, and it wasn't a flat out effort. So that points to me that my fitness, etc., is at a level where I can go faster than 5:55. So the aim for our trials is to go faster than that, But then it's a case of how much faster than that can I go. I feel like it's in the tank, but it's just how I approach the 2K itself, which will make a big difference. As I've seen before, I've done pre-seas before where I struggled to do a 6-minute pace, and then we've talked to the coaches, we've changed a little bit of technique here and there, and I've managed to get closer to a PB. So it is possible, it's just a case of how I do it. So outside of the strategy of the 2K itself and changing that just slightly, I'm not going to be going splits and splits different. It can just be that 0.5 here, 0.5 there, and putting myself in a position where my body is then ready to fire rather than not, essentially. So there's the strategy of the 2K to assess, and I think playing to my strengths will be much better. And then there's the other things about recovery, fueling. Have they been correct this week? And also just overall training. And what do I mean by the three of those things? So sleep and recovery are absolutely huge. Has that been off this past week? I think that I'm finally getting to a stage, after however many years I've been training, understanding my body more and more. And every day I train, every month I train, I get to understand it. And as my training history gets longer, I can understand what I need. And it's been quite new, especially this sort of summer period, the summer into now, that I've been trying to sleep what might seem like a massive amount, but I think my body just might be needing that. So for the past week, I wasn't sleeping that huge amount. Not that I was having difficulty sleeping, but taking it for granted what I was doing. So for the past 5 or 6 weeks, maybe less than that, 3 or 4 weeks, I've been almost getting to sleep or getting into bed before 9 o'clock, and then getting up just past 6 o'clock. So getting almost 9 hours of sleep, rather than, okay, we get into bed at just around 9 and then get distracted and it's 9:30. And that can make a big difference, not only in, okay, you're getting half an hour of sleep less or more, but also if you wake up in the ends of a sleep cycle, you feel much better. So if you constantly don't wake up at the end of a sleep cycle, it can actually cause a bit more fatigue than if you have a bit less sleep but wake up at the end of a sleep cycle, if that makes sense. I'm not going to go into loads of detail about sleep, but I think really focusing and honing in on sleep this week to recover for next week will be a big key. Fueling, I don't think fueling could have been much different this week. I've been pretty on it for the past summer till now time. Been really helpful just to be paying attention a bit more to what I'm eating, what I'm fueling, and that's pretty on it. Which I think there's two things that, like recovery and food or recovery and fuel are two things that can sometimes, if you get them wrong, both of them, one of them, can really make a drastic difference to performance, or they can definitely make a drastic difference to performance. And lastly, training in general, training overall. And so what do I mean by that? Well, when you're training 2-3 times a day, you get fatigued. And then, like I think it was yesterday I talked about, there's times when you train really hard, 2-3 sessions a day, and you just keep pushing forward. And then you have a 2K test come up, and do you back off the training to make sure that 2K goes well, or do you continue pushing with the training and still hope it goes well, and then it might not? So I think a little bit of what happened as well, so a little contributing factor was we've been doing the training and we've been pushing the training, and it contributed to not having a great score. So that bodes well for next week. With a little bit of a taper we'll get, reduction of mileage. It should help with just that little bit extra. Because realistically, if I'm holding 29s for 1250-ish, which was happened today, and then I'll just that small bit fresher, so say we do add the taper and we're not pushing the training as hard because we're not doing as much mileage, then all it needs is a couple of hundred, maybe 300 of more 29s, and then you're almost at the finish, and the likelihood is you're going to hold on because you've already seen the work you've done for 1500, 1600, and then it's a little bit of a sprint to the end. So I think all of that is how I'm looking forward. So getting my sleep right a little bit, making sure I'm getting enough sleep, not that it's been bad, just I think that it's really important for me to get it right, especially when we're pushing training. Making sure I'm fueling right, not that that's been bad either, but just being on top of it and making sure it's a definite rather than, I think the fueling went right. And of course talking to the coaches to see training wise what could be different, not so much going forward because we're going into trials and the program's designed to make us sharp for trials, but more, okay, we've trained up to this point, why are you going and having a wobble during this piece where other people are managing to do all right? So I think that's pretty much how I'm looking at it overall. But over everything with rowing, with any sport that you do, with anything that we're doing, if you don't get the success that you wanted, if you don't quite hit the goals that you had or that you set out for yourself, that doesn't mean that you can't do it. It doesn't mean that you can't hit that goal. It doesn't mean that you're a failure. It doesn't mean that you're any worse than the person next to you or the person that you're chasing down or whatever it is. It just means that you might have to take a different path. That you might have to go and say, my road is going to be a bit different to yours, and that's okay. And then on top of that, it's making sure that you enjoy or try to enjoy everything. It can be pretty exciting when you have a bad day and you're like, that's why I had a bad day, and then you go out, not the next day, but the next time you get an opportunity to, and right those wrongs, if you will. You get an opportunity to say, for people to say to you, well, for me, for example, today, well, that's classic Cam. He did 5:55, now he did 6:10. That's classic. So now it's my opportunity to go in and say, okay, I did 6:10, what can I do differently to make sure that doesn't happen? And like I said, I'm getting to understand my body that bit more as my training history grows, but obviously still not there yet. And obviously with the support of the YAM squad, it helps my progress, the coaches as well, and everything. We're on a path forward, but it's not necessarily a straight one. So hopefully that all kind of helps you guys somewhere, somehow. Like I've always said about doing the videos, I don't want to make them about, okay, I did a 5:55, cool. I did a 5:53, cool. I did a 5:50, cool. There are days when it's not going to be great. Everyone has their good days and everyone has their bad days, and that's what I'm trying to show you guys. If I can have a bad day, you can have a bad day. It's how we bounce back and see what we can do after. And that will be it for today's episode of YAM Squad. If you are struggling with anything, as always, reach out to someone. No matter if it's struggling with a 2K or struggling with anything else, reaching out is a big part of getting through to those successes once more. So today, speaking to the coaches and really saying, what was that? What just happened? And then working from there. And I will see you in the next episode for some more prep for trials next week.